Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julie Zunker, and I'm a board member with the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And I'm thrilled you could join us for this informative event with Liz Camfiord of Penguin Random House. Liz has been a returning host of these events for a number of years now, and we really appreciate her insights. So I would like to welcome all of you, our library supporters, donors, our advocates, volunteers, board members, and board alumni. Thank you so much for supporting the foundation and the library. This is a special edition of our Lunch with a Publisher, as we are recognizing this week our National Banned Books Week, this week through the 7th, and we're very excited about this presentation. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. The Seattle Public Library is on Indigenous land. These are the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people, past and present. A patron has recently asked us, why do you do this acknowledgement? What do you want us to do? And we appreciate this question. It's curiosity. By acknowledging the land and bringing awareness to Native and American history, it's something we can do to demonstrate our organization's commitment to equity and to learning. We encourage you to use the library resources to study, understand, and act in a way that inspires you. We acknowledge the land with gratitude and encourage you to do the same. Thank you for taking a moment to reflect. So before we start, I just wanted to let everyone know that you're all muted, but you will have an opportunity to come off mute and ask questions following Liz's presentation. If you have any technical assistance or you require technical assistance, such as captions, please use the chat box and a member of the library team will assist you. You can also use the Q&A button on the screen if you have questions for Liz, and we'll get to as many questions as possible after the presentation. So I'm excited to introduce you to Liz Camfiord today. She has worked at Penguin Random House for more than 25 years. She has joined us, as I said, throughout the years to highlight amazing new books hitting the shelves soon. I'd like to turn it over to her, and we'll come back shortly for Q&A. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, give me 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy Banned Books Week. Of course, we're not happy of what's happening with the banning of books, but we want to celebrate the right to read this week and every day. So my presentation today will talk about what we are doing as Penguin Random House to fight the banning of books across the country. And also I will give my usual presentation about books publishing this fall, books that are sort of our lead titles and that we're really excited about at our company. So to get started, of course, my screen is not advancing. There we go. So I wanted to just acknowledge today's exciting news for Penguin Random House author Catalin Carrico, who has been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Today that was announced. She shares the prize with Drew Weissman for their work on the mRNA vaccines. The memoir that's coming out in October, her memoir about being a woman in science, is going to be a really fascinating read, and we're just super excited about her prize. As we are about today's news, where 6 of our Penguin Random House titles have made the cut for the National Book Awards. These are the finalists, and the awards, the award winners will be announced November 15th at the usual ceremony in New York City, in Manhattan. So just really quickly, I want to touch on these books that are nominated. You're probably familiar with them, but just real quickly, in case you're not, Chain Gang All-Stars features, this is a fascinating premise, 2 top women gladiators who fight for their freedom within a depraved prison system. And this is not so far removed from America's own prison system. Then we have Fire Weather, and this examines the colossal wildfire in 2016 in Fort McMurray, the hub of Canada's oil industry. It talks, of course, about climate change, about our impact on natural systems. And then Liliana's Invincible Summer is a searing memoir of grief and the quest to bring the author's sister's murderer to justice years after the fact. And she's one of Mexico's greatest living writers. Then we have a graphic novel with the funny title, Huda F. Cares. It's Laugh Out Loud. It's a sequel to the first graphic novel by the author, Huda F. Are You? And this features the Fahmies, their family. They're off to Disney World in this escapade, in this installment, and self-conscious Huda worries her family will stand out too much at Disney World. So then that's for young readers, young adult readers. And then we have a memoir, We Could Have Been Friends, My Father and I. This is a Palestinian memoir. It's a subtle psychological portrait of the author's relationship with his father during the 20th century battle for Palestinian human rights. And then from Candlewick Press, which is one of our premier, I just love their picture books. We have a picture book, and this is Gather. It's about a resourceful teenager. Actually, it's not a picture book. What am I saying? This is a young adult novel in rural Vermont who's struggling to hold on to the family home with his mom while his mom recovers from addiction. And it's a debut novel. And if you've joined me before, I've talked about the Library Reads program, which you can learn more about at libraryreads.org. This is the program in which librarians and library staff from all over the country vote on their favorite books of that month, books that are coming out in that given month. So every month, 10 books are chosen. Sometimes there's a special feature with a Hall of Fame author who's been on the list for making it their third time. But this has tended to really showcase a lot of paperback genre fiction, a lot of rom-coms, but with really interesting premises and eccentric characters. So those first few on the slide, you probably know Sophie Kinsella. She's written a number of books, are in the rom-com paperback world. And then we have The Unmaking of June Farrow. And this mixes romance and suspense. It's about a family's 100-year-old curse, and it's set in a small mountain town in North Carolina. So it's got really that regional flavor and a lot of suspense and romance. Westart Kill, I'll be talking about at more length a little later. And then Straw Dogs is about a Chinese railroad worker and his young daughter sold into servitude in the 19th century in California. And that search for family, fulfillment, and belonging in this violent new land at that time. And we are still celebrating Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month through October 15th. Here are some of our featured titles that we've been promoting during this month. I especially love the poetry volume Tarda Americana, which is sort of a new take on Don McLean's American Pie anthem. It's a suite of poems, and it's very much it's channeling the voice of legendary singer-songwriter Ritchie Valens. It addresses race and art, identity and desire, and of course, American Pie, if you don't know or remember, was inspired by the tragic deaths of Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens. And then we've got a wonderful book about Latino heroes who changed the United States. And Solito, I'm sure you know about this incredible memoir told from the perspective of a 9-year-old boy crossing into the States from El Salvador and that harrowing journey. It's also in Spanish. There's a young readers adaptation. It's a very popular pick for community reads programs across the country. So just an incredible look. And then Crying in the Bathroom is Erica Sanchez's memoir, and you may know her name from her phenomenal bestseller, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. And then we have Rivermouth, about language, faith, and migration, and a beautiful, colorful, delicious cookbook, Mi Cochina. Now, we're going to focus a little bit on Banned Books Week and all of the things that Penguin Random House is doing, as I said, to fight censorship, to fight the banning of books. So with PEN America's latest report, 3,362 there have already been 3,362 instances of book bans in just the 2022-2023 school year. This is clearly an urgent situation. Most of the challenges were to books written by or about a person of color or a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. We're deeply involved in defending the right to read. We've joined in lawsuits with PEN America, Freedom to Read Foundation, and the Little Free Library. The latest victory was September 18th, when a federal judge blocked the Texas book rating law, HB 900, which was going to require booksellers to label content of books. So that was a victory. We have an amazing Banned Books hub, which you can find if you go to penguinrandomhouse.com/bannedbooks. There's a ton of information there. It's interactive. People can report on challenges that they're seeing in their own communities. This is just a snapshot of one piece of that website where you can learn about legal action, there's support for parents and teachers, how we're supporting authors and creators, the organizations we're involved with. It's just, you can spend a lot of time educating yourself and getting activated on this issue. Here's just a slide of some of the many, many books that have been challenged or banned or pulled from shelves. So the reason, you can go in and see some of the quote reasoning given. But as I said, this issue really affects kids who want to see themselves reflected in literature, and just empathy and all of the things that are so important with kids at school and going to libraries. And the idea of limiting access is just so troubling. So please do visit the site. You can also visit Borrow, Read, Repeat, which is our patron-facing site for library patrons. Lots of information there as well, including an event that's happening on Thursday, where we have American Library Association's Tracy D. Hall, who will be speaking to the issue. One of our wonderful editors-in-chief of the imprint One World will be there, and we will also be premiering Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's ALA conference address that he gave in June that was so rousing. And so I encourage you, if you have the time, it's free to register and join in with all of these organizations and learn a little bit more. Thank you so much for that, for caring and being involved if you can be. So now I'm going to just remind you that there's a wonderful First Look book club that you can join. It's an email book club wherein if you sign up, you get a chapter a day of a new book release. And so by the end of the week, you've read 5 chapters, or you've not read the 5 chapters, you've decided it's not for you. But Suzanne Beecher, who's the host of this, picks great books, and she's really got a wonderful personality, such a book lover, and so much fun to read her takes. And there are all sorts of resources that are included in this. So I'm excited that Jane Ann Phillips, who's a writer I've admired for a long time, her short stories, her novels, has a new book that's getting so much attention after many years of writing. So this one finds, to quote the New York Times Book Review, finds anguish and asylum in Civil War America. It's a mother-daughter story set in a West Virginia mental institution. And if you're anything like me, you're fascinated with mental institutions, this is a really great book for you. And her writing she can be a little experimental, but just such a great literary fiction writer. And now some new and forthcoming fiction, starting with Wellness, which is Oprah's current book club selection. This is a heartwarming satire about our cultural obsessions and anxieties. She calls the novel brilliant, a modern take on love, marriage, and the impact technology and social media has on our culture and in our lives. In the story, when Jack and Elizabeth meet as college students in the 90s, the two quickly join forces. They're holding on tight to each other, eager to claim a place in Chicago's thriving underground art scene, with an appreciative kindred spirit. And then they fast forward 20 years to married life. Alongside the challenges of parenting, they encounter cults disguised as mindfulness support groups, polyamorous would-be suitors, Facebook wars, and something called Love Potion Number 9. For the first time, Jack and Elizabeth struggle to recognize each other, and the no longer youthful dreamers are forced to face their demons, from unfulfilled career ambitions to painful childhood memories of their own dysfunctional families. And in the process, they must undertake separate personal excavations or risk losing the best thing in their lives, each other. Nathan Hill came onto the scene with his novel, The Knicks. It won lots of awards. He lives in Florida, and this is a book very much about our current moment, about social media and technology's effect on relationships. Really a strong title. And I think Oprah does a great job with the books that she picks. Then we have All You Have to Do Is Call. This is a historical novel based on the Jane Collective, which is a little written about, not very well known underground Chicago-based women's health group that was running in the 70s, run by women, and it provided safe and affordable illegal abortions. So the setting here is Chicago in the early 70s. The question is, who does a woman call when she needs help? Jane. So Veronica, who's Jane's founder, prides herself on the services she's been able to offer to thousands of women, yet she feels that she's leading a bit of a double life as a conventional housewife, which becomes even more difficult during her own high-risk pregnancy. Two other women in Veronica's neighborhood are grappling with similar disconnects. We've got Margaret, who's a young professor at the University of Chicago. She's secretly volunteering at Jane, and she falls in love with a man whose attitude towards his ex-wife increasingly disturbs her. And then there's Patty, who's long been content as a devoted wife and mother, but she's begun to sense that something essential is missing from her life. And when her runaway young sister, Eliza, shows up unexpectedly, Patty is forced to come to terms with what it really means to love and support a sister. This adds a really thoughtful insight and background to the Roe v. Wade dialogue. And our author, Carrie Marr, wrote the Paris bookseller about Sylvia Beach, who was the founder of Shakespeare and Company. And so she just writes really good, well-researched historical fiction. And that's available now. And then we have A Haunting in Hialeah Gardens. Since his wife died, Hugo Contreras' debt from her medical bills is astronomical. His world in Miami has shrunk. He really just shuffles between his efficiency apartment and a botanica and a strip mall where he works as the resident babalawo, which is sort of a priest. When Hugo's debt collector, Alexi, calls to say his house is haunted, Alexi proposes a deal. If Hugo can successfully cleanse his home, his debt will be forgiven. The only issue is that Hugo really doesn't have a spiritual life. He doesn't believe in ghosts or hauntings or God or anything. So he plans to do what he's always done, which is use sleight of hand and amateur psychology to convince Alexei that the spirits have departed. But things go really awry when memories of his childhood in the Bolivian silver mines and a fraught crossing into the United States as a boy collide with Alexei's demons in this explosive climax. Christina Garcia gave this book a rave review, saying it's delivered with hilarity and heartbreak in equal measure, lush prose. You really see the colorful Miami, and also the human costs of immigration, poverty, debt, and discrimination. So very interesting book, and the setting is really lush. And then Shoot the Moon. Here we meet recent physics graduate Annie Fisk. She has an undeniable pull towards space. Her childhood memories are overshadowed by loss. She's left home, she's left her family and her first love in pursuit of intellectual fulfillment. When she finally lands a job at NASA as a secretary during the Apollo 11 mission, the work is everything she dreamed. And while she feels a budding attraction to one of the engineers, she can't get distracted, not now, when her inability to ignore mistaken calculations propels her into a new position. She finds herself torn between her ambition, her heart, and a mysterious discovery that upends everything she knows to be scientifically true. This is really an on-trend read, similar in setting to Hidden Figures and Atomic Love. It's a powerful coming of adulthood take with really strong, a strong bisexual representation, and would appeal to Sarah Waters readers. It also has a metaphysical bent that will speak to readers who loved Time After Time. And then Lessons in Chemistry is a perfect comparative title too. And then we have Westart Kill. So Westart Kill is a debut novel with a sophisticated twist on the classic murder mystery. This is set at a remote hunting lodge where everyone is a suspect, including the erratic detective on the scene. This detective is Adam McManus. He joins an old college friend for the bicentennial weekend at the exclusive Westart Club in upstate New York. He finds himself among a set of not entirely friendly strangers. Then the body of one of the members is found at the lake's edge. Hours later, a major storm hits. By the time the power is restored on Sunday, 2 more people will be dead. Rave reviews for this say this one is a diabolical locked room mystery. And another debut, Guy's Girl. The first line in the book is this: Ginny isn't sure which came first, the bad habit or the boy. So Ginny Murphy is a total guy's girl. She's always found friendships with boys easier to form and keep drama free, as long as they don't fall for her and she doesn't fall for them. She and her best guy friends have always stuck to that. But then she meets Adrian, the only one who's ever made her crave more. And Ginny begins to question her own rules. Piece by piece, they begin to fall into something intoxicating, something dangerous. Ginny threatens to destroy Adrian's belief that love isn't worth the risk. And for Jenny, letting Adrian get close could mean exposing a long-held secret, her disordered eating. So the author has a really compelling letter in the beginning of this book. She has a huge TikTok following because she's been so open about her struggles with eating disorders. She's passionate about correcting misconceptions of anorexia and bulimia. In a very personal letter, as I said, she talks about how therapeutic writing this story was and how this is the book she so desperately needed in her 20s. So this would be a good crossover novel for certain young adult readers. And then we have The Berry Pickers, which is another coming of age story. This opens in July of 1962. Mi'kmaq family from Nova Scotia arrives in Maine to pick blueberries for the summer. Weeks later, 4-year-old Ruthie, the family's youngest child, vanishes. She's last seen by her 6-year-old brother, Joe, sitting on a favorite rock at the edge of a berry field. Joe will remain distraught by his sister's disappearance for years to come. So then, in Maine, a young girl named Norma grows up as the only child of an affluent family. Her father's emotionally distant, her mother frustratingly overprotective. Norma's often troubled by recurring dreams and visions that seem more like memories than imagination. As she grows older, she slowly comes to realize there's something her parents aren't telling her. Unwilling to abandon her intuition, she will spend decades trying to uncover the family secret. This is an epic sibling story. It would make a great book club choice. Lots to discuss, as in like a Tommy Orange novel or Britt Bennett's novels. And then the author is the winner of the 2021 Indigenous Voices Award, and she lives in Nova Scotia. She's worked for many years with First Nation communities in Eastern Canada for the last 13 years. And then Michael Cunningham, who's one of our literary luminaries, won the Pulitzer Prize for The Hours. This follows a similar structure as in that novel, in The Hours. It's his first novel in 10 years. This takes the day April 5th in 3 different years, 2019, 2020, and 2021, to reveal the love, loss, and limitations of the life of one family. Colm Toibin calls the novel unsparing and tender. So we've got April 5th, 2019, where readers are taken into a cozy brownstone in Brooklyn. Dan and Isabel, troubled husband and wife, are both a little bit in love with Isabel's younger brother, Robbie, who's been living with them in the attic, trying to get over his most recent boyfriend, and has created a glamorous online avatar. His departure threatens to break the family apart. Meanwhile, Nathan, their son, age 10, is taking his first uncertain steps towards independence. And while Violet, 5 years old, does her best not to notice the growing rift between her parents. And then we have April 5th of 2020. The world is going into lockdown. The brownstone is feeling more like a prison. 5-year-old Violet's obsessed with keeping her family safe. Nathan's attempting to skirt the rules. Isabel and Dan communicate mostly in veiled jabs. Things are getting super tense. April 5th, 2021, emerging from the worst of the crisis, the family reckons with the aftermath and how they might go on. This is set in the pandemic, but Cunningham says it's not a pandemic novel per se. I mean, think of Lucy by the Sea would be a good comparison. And the family dynamics are paramount in this book and would also make a great book club pick. And I'm sure it's destined for many prizes coming out in November. Then we have The Mystery Guest, which is a follow-up, though could be read as a standalone, to the #1 New York Times bestseller, Good Morning America pick, The Maid. This has Molly and her friends back for another twisty, murderous adventure. Stephen King said Molly is the most interesting and endearing character in a long time. So Molly has this flair for cleaning and proper etiquette. She's risen through the ranks of the glorious 5-star Regency Grand Hotel to become the esteemed head maid. But just as her life reaches a pinnacle state of perfection, her world is turned upside down when J.D. Grimthorpe, the world-renowned mystery writer, drops dead, very dead, on the hotel's tea room floor. It becomes clear that this is a murder. Suspects abound. Everyone wants to know who killed J.D. Grimthorpe. The case threatens the hotel's pristine reputation. Molly knows she alone holds the key to unlock the killer's identity. But the key's buried deep in her past because long ago she knew J.D. Grimthorpe, and she begins to comb her memory for clues, revisiting her childhood and the mysterious Grimthorpe mansion where she and her dearly departed Gran once worked side by side. The Wildest Sun it follows the author's New York Times bestselling debut, 50 Words for Rain. Asha Lemmy's new novel introduces Delphine Aubert, an aspiring young writer in post-war Paris. She's embarking on a long-desired quest to find her father, who she believes is Ernest Hemingway. This takes her from Paris to New York, to Harlem, to Havana, Key West, to find the man she believes is her father. Hemingway is elusive and iconic. She desperately yearns for his approval as both a daughter and a writer, and she's convinced he holds the key to who she's truly meant to be. But what will happen if she's wrong? So her debut, 50 Words for Rain, was a tremendous success. It's going to be adapted for Apple TV Plus by none other than Malala Yousafzai. I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sorry. And also was the winner of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association Best First Novel Award. It's a gripping, this novel, The Wildest Sun, is a gripping portrait of the artist as a young woman that lays bare the complexities of family trauma, fraught inheritance, and creative ambition, so says author Taya Miles. Daughter of Ashes. This is the third book in Ilaria Tutti's gripping series. It's a page-turning psychological thriller set in the idyllic mountains of northern Italy. Here, Superintendent Teresa Bataglia is on sick leave, recovering from a recent brush with death in pursuit of a killer. But none of her colleagues, not even her partner, know that it's actually her Alzheimer's getting worse and that Teresa is unsure she will ever return to work. Her plans for retirement are shelved, however, when she's urgently summoned to meet with menacing serial killer Giacomo Marinardi, who refuses to speak with anyone but Teresa. He has disconcerting news. Somebody is after him, and only Teresa holds the key to keeping everyone, including herself, safe. To solve the case, Teresa must come face to face with a history she thought she'd buried back to when Giacomo first began to kill, and Teresa, newly pregnant and married to an abusive man, did everything she could to catch him. So the author lives in Gemona del Friuli in the province of Udine. She has won Italy's National Women's Literary Prize, nominated for the Sue Grafton Memorial Award. She's just highly acclaimed. And then her two previous books in the series are featured there on the slide. And these are translated. Anna Bliss is a local author here in California. This is her historical novel debut. It spans England's anti-fascism protests of 1936 through the aftermath of World War II. It's a historical novel that brings together a young Irish Catholic photographer and a British Jewish medical student. It's deeply romantic and draws attention to the rarely acknowledged fact of how popular and commonplace anti-Semitism and fascism were in the UK and the US in the years before World War II. This is inspired by a little-known historical event, the Battle of Cable Street on October 4th in 1936, which was a massive historic counter-fascist event in London just before the war. Jewish and Irish immigrant families banded together to stop an anti-Semitic march through East London. In the novel, the photographer Kate meets David, the Jewish medical student, at this protest. Our author, Anna Bliss, writes from experience here. She's lived in Brighton while she was pursuing her degree in women's narratives during World War II. She didn't live there during World War II, the narratives from World War II. And on a more personal level, she was raised Irish American Catholic and converted to Judaism after falling in love with her husband. I don't know if you've read Sigin Nunes, but she just keeps getting better and better. She won the National Book Award for The Friend, and following the dog in The Friend, who was main character in The Friend, and the cat in her more recent novel, What Are You Going Through? This novel brings us an unforgettable parrot. It's elegy plus comedy is the only way to express how we live in the world, according to Sigin Nunes, and a character in this ninth novel. Humor, to be sure, is a priceless refuge. Equally vital, though, is connection with others, who here include an adrift member of Gen Z, a spirited parrot named Eureka, and a spirited parrot named Eureka. The Vulnerables reveals what happens when strangers are willing to open their hearts to each other and how far even small acts of caring can go to ease another's distress. Kirkus, in its starred review, says The Vulnerables itself is strangely, sweetly hopeful, sharp, and surprisingly tender. And here is a kind of a breakout novel, first time in English in the US, by the acclaimed Chilean author Benjamin Labute. It's a haunting story centered on the Hungarian polymath John von Neumann, a prodigy whose gifts terrified the people around him as he transformed every field he touched, inventing game theory and the first programmable computer and pioneering AI, digital life, and cellular automata. Through a course of family members, friends, colleagues, and rivals, the author shows us the evolution of a mind unmatched and of a body of work that has unmoored the world in its wake. This is the kind of novel that I think all the interest in Oppenheimer, readers might really gravitate to understand this historical figure and the impact that his life had on us, on our contemporary lives. This places von Neumann at the center of a literary triptych, beginning with Paul Ehrenfest, an Austrian physicist and friend of Einstein, who fell into despair when he saw science and technology becoming tyrannical forces. It ends 100 years later in the showdown between the South Korean Go master Lee Sedol and the AI program AlphaGo. So as we're struggling to come to terms with climate disaster, the rise of AI, Labute explores the line between genius and madness, reckoning really with the question, can technology go too far? And his previous book, When We Cease to Understand the World, was a National Book Award finalist and also one of Barack Obama's recommended reads. And now some nonfiction. This is a photograph of one of my favorite libraries at UC Berkeley, the Morrison Reading Room. So I just felt like I wanted to include it. Susan Casey. Perhaps you've read The Wave or some of her previous nonfiction. She's really our premier chronicler of the aquatic world. And for this book, she traversed the globe, joining scientists and explorers on dives to the deepest places on the planet. She interviewed marine geologists, marine biologists, oceanographers, and this is a fascinating journey through the history of deep sea exploration, taking on the myths and legends of the ancient world to storied shipwrecks that we can now reach on the bottom, to the scientists who are just beginning to understand the mind-blowing complexity and ecological importance of the quadrillions of creatures who live in realms long thought to be devoid of life. What a fascinating, gripping narrative. And William Finnegan, author of Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life, said, after reading this book, you will come to understand that deep sea mining must be stopped. So it's quite motivating as well. And then Historically Black Phrases. This is a fun and thoughtful dictionary of Black language you didn't know you needed. Historically Black Phrases, it's a love letter to the Black community and the ways it drives culture. So Black vernacular doesn't often get its due, despite its enormous influence on mainstream culture. Historically Black Phrases is here to give Black language its flowers. It's a celebration of more than 200 staples of Black conversation, from church sayings and units of measure to compliments and reprimands. It offers definitions and notable pop culture moments, as well as tips on pronunciation and usage of the phrases. In addition to the phrases, short essays offer insight on different facets of Black language from scholars, entertainers, and pop culture commentators. It's a book about language as resistance, as it champions Black culture and language, celebrating and elevating a lexicon that has historically been discriminated against. The authors are co-hosts of Fonty Podcasts, which was chosen for Apple Podcasts, our favorites this year list in 2020. So really cool book. Oh my gosh, I think we're entering Arnold Mania or something. So he has his first ever TV series on Netflix, Fubar. He has the 3-part documentary called Arnold, also on Netflix, which I watched and I thought was really interesting. This is sort of a self-help book. Think what Matthew McConaughey did in Green Lights. So full of anecdotes and full of his passion and what has motivated him to throughout his life, the successes, and he's quite honest about his flaws and failures. This takes 7 rules to follow to realize your true purpose in life, distilled by Arnold Schwarzenegger from his own journey. He's the world's greatest bodybuilder, the world's highest paid movie star, the leader of the world's 6th largest economy. That is Arnold Schwarzenegger. His stratospheric success is the result of clear vision, big thinking. These are the 7: clear vision, big thinking, hard work, direct communication, resilient problem solving, open-minded curiosity, and a commitment to giving back. All of this is guided by the one lesson that his father hammered into him above all: to be useful. So it's a blunt book, it's humorous, it's earnest. He'll be all over talk shows. That's already begun because, and it publishes in about a week, in exactly a week. The writer strike's over, talk shows are back on, and he's got a full schedule of talking about the book. And so I think it'll be super popular, and people will, I think, come to it like they did for Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. And then for word lovers, the dictionary people, the unsung heroes who created the Oxford English Dictionary, which is one of mankind's greatest achievements. And yet, curiously, its creators are almost never considered. Who were these people behind this unprecedented book? As our author Sarah Ogilvie reveals, they include 3 murderers, a collector of pornography, the daughter of Karl Marx, a president of Yale, a radical suffragette, a vicar who was later found dead in the cupboard of his chapel, an inventor of the first American subway, a female anti-slavery activist in Philadelphia, and thousands of others. This is a celebration of words, language, and people whose eccentricities and obsessions, triumphs, and failures enrich the English language. It's got chapter titles such as Cannibal, Lunatics, Pornographer, Tricksters, and X-Rated. This is no dull, dry linguistic history. So I love the reviews. Jamaica Kincaid, who I adore, says it's a lively, funny book. Exquisitely written. Jeanette Winterson says it's a wonder book for word lovers. Anna DeVere Smith says these stories are a perfect dose of hope. So the author's a linguist, a lexicographer, and technologist. She currently teaches at Oxford University, where she develops and directs a new degree integrating humanities with technology. The Sisterhood. We have a number of books about female espionage, about women spies, and this is one of our best that we've offered. The author wrote Code Girls, which was really successful, and now she's returning with a revelatory history of 3 generations of the CIA. And these are the women who fought to become operatives, transformed spycraft, and tracked down Osama bin Laden. It covers the entire history of the CIA from its founding in 1947 to the shockwaves sent through it in the wake of 9/11. It's got a 4-color insert that will make the story even more vivid. And despite discrimination, even because of it, women who started as clerks, secretaries, or unpaid spouses rose to become some of the CIA's shrewdest operatives. After the 9/11 attack, more women joined the agency as a new job called Targeter came to prominence. They showed that data analysis would be crucial to the post-9/11 national security landscape, and that was an effort that culminated spectacularly in the CIA's successful efforts to track down Osama bin Laden in his Pakistani compound. Steve Cole says of the Sisterhood, it's a rip-roaring read, an inspiring group portrait of extraordinary CIA women whose careers are multi-sided profiles in courage. And now a poetry collection. So this is from the beloved New York Times bestselling author of Heart Talk. She's hailed as the poet of her generation by Time Magazine. And she really offers a consoling voice in clear, deep poetry and prose also. Cleo Wade urges those feelings of confusion, lost, being overwhelmed, she brings solace to those feelings. And she says, what is essential is love, which is not a want, but a need and our birthright. So this is really reminiscent of the comfort found in classic favorites from like Maya Angelou and Mary Oliver. It's a beautiful lifeline for members of every generation. And a new book from David Brooks, who's known to millions of readers and viewers, readers of his weekly New York Times column, and then countless television appearances. The Washington Post has called him one of the most prominent public intellectuals of our time. Here he's written a practical, heartfelt guide to the art of truly knowing another person in order to foster deeper connections at home, work, and throughout our lives. He posits that all around us are people who feel invisible and misunderstood. In How to Know a Person, he sets out to help us do better, posing questions that are essential for all of us. If you want to know a person, what kind of attention should you cast on them? What kind of conversation should you have? What part of a person's story should you pay attention to? It's driven really by his trademark sense of curiosity and his determination to grow as a person. He draws from the fields of psychology and neuroscience, from the worlds of theater, philosophy, and history, to present this welcoming, hopeful, integrated approach to human connection. A Woman I Know. This is also about female spies, double identities, and a new story of the Kennedy assassination. So history's long overlooked the many women who left a significant mark on Cold War spying, and from the field, not just behind the desk. This book presents some of their eye-opening stories. It's the true story of independent filmmaker Mary Haverstick, who thought she'd stumbled onto the project of a lifetime, a biopic of a little-known aviation legend whose story seemed to embody the hopeful spirit of the dawn of the space age. But after she received a mysterious warning from a government agent, Haverstick began to suspect that all was not as it seemed, and she dug deeper. There was a darker story, a story of double identities and female spies, a tangle of intrigue that stretched from the fields of the Congo to the shores of Cuba, streets of Mexico City to the dark heart of the Kennedy assassination in Dallas. So we are publishing this on November 22nd, 23, the 60th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. Ralph Nader, a new book from Ralph Nader, and kind of a different one, The Rebellious CEO. Ralph Nader is here profiling 12 leaders who did it right, as the subtitle says. He's really the loudest corporate critic, but here he is showcasing these 12 CEOs who went against the grain to fight for prosperity and justice over greed. These include Anita Roddick, founder of The Body Shop, Patagonia's Yvonne Chouinard, Vanguard's John Bogle, and busboys and poets Andy Shalal, among others. Nader's fans will be shocked, and his foes, as he lists positive examples of big business and the social changes they've inspired. And these choices very much are leaders who have promoted ecological change and social growth, such as prioritizing employees over customers and using environmentally friendly materials. Oh, Phil Stutz. That's another author whose documentary on Netflix, I think it was Netflix, was so great. I think it's called Stutz, and one of his patients, he's a psychologist, is Jonah Hill. And so Jonah Hill made a documentary about his therapist. These are 30 profound essays by Phil Stutz, who wrote The Tools, which was a huge, phenomenal success. He, as I said, is the subject of the documentary Stutz. He says there are issues, and then there are issues: love, loss, success, failure, hope, regret, life and death. How can we even begin to think clearly about dilemmas so universally confounding? He has spent his life pondering the big challenges that we all face, and this book puts the conclusions he's reached at your fingertips. So he, graduated Phi Beta Kappa from City College in New York, received his MD from New York University, and he worked as a prison psychiatrist on Rikers Island, and then went into private practice in New York, and now he's here in Los Angeles. The LA Times says his psychology has an otherworldly dimension. His existentialist teachings are as much a spiritual education as they are a therapeutic endeavor. Long-awaited memoir. This is huge. We are printing so many of these books, and it's just, she's going to do a ton of publicity, and you'll be hearing a lot more about My Name is Barbara. This includes never before seen photographs from her personal collection. She's a living legend. Her career spans 6 decades in which she excelled in every area of entertainment. She's among the handful of EGOT winners, which stands for Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Awards, and has one of the greatest and most recognizable voices in the history of popular music. Of course, she will narrate her audiobook, and it took a really long time for her to do that. Lots of sessions, but it should be extraordinary. Here she's telling her own story about her life and her career, about growing up in Brooklyn, to her first star-making appearances in New York nightclubs, to her appearance in Funny Girl, her breakout appearance. The book's like Barbara herself, frank and funny, opinionated. She recounts her early struggles to become an actress, her friendships with figures ranging from Marlon Brando to Madeleine Albright. Her political advocacy is here, and the fulfillment she's found in her marriage to James Brolin. And I'm winding down here. Thank you so much for your attention. But not before I say Dolly Parton, we love her so much. Talk about a queen of literacy. Her programs to get books to kids in schools is just incredible. So this is Dolly Parton Behind the Seams. We're showcasing really the audiobook because she's so infectious, telling her story. But we also have a beautiful gift book for any Dolly Parton fan there too. So I just think that she will, she's an amazing person. So enter this for all of her tips and anecdotes and archival interviews, and just be dazzled. Some more gift book ideas. So I have been talking about, I might have even presented Terence Hayes' Watch Your Language in a previous Book Buzz, but I just think it would make such a fabulous gift. He's a National Book Award winner. This is, I think, he's had 9 collections of poems, but this is more of a primer, a poetry primer. He's a poet, a teacher, an artist, and this is a brilliant invitation into the world of poets who've influenced him and who've had a huge influence on contemporary poetry. These are essays, timelines, biographies, and also his illustrations. I mean, it's really multimedia, and it's fun, and these snippets of poet biographies. I mean, there's just nothing daunting about it. It's only inspiring. It's only beautiful. And he also is a huge lover of libraries. He writes in his introduction about his reading life in libraries. He calls your library, he says, your library is a time-traveling machine, stating this book is a model for watching language wherever you find it. And then we have Roman Stories by none other than Jhumpa Lahiri. This is her first short story collection. Of course, she's won the Pulitzer Prize. Here, Rome is the protagonist, not just the setting of these 9 stories. This was written in her adopted language of Italian, and then seamlessly translated by herself and her Knopf editor. These stories are steeped in the moods of Italian master Alberto Moravia and guided in the concluding tale by the electable ghost of Dante Alighieri, whose words lead the protagonists toward a new way of life. Starred reviews galore. Vogue calls Roman Stories a delectable, sun-washed treat. The stories have a beating heart of the city itself, a place of magnificent decay and vibrant, varied life. And then just quickly, these last two, we've got Mother Nature, which is about a mother-son trek. They have disagreed on politics and religion, and they take this huge trek together to have a meeting of the minds, and it's a really beautiful story. And the author's mother and father in the 70s wrote, it was called like Traveling Across America. I can't remember the title. So they, they are known to readers, and this is going to be a really interesting take. And then we have Seafood Simple, which is by, excuse me, I have a note about this. It's a definitive seafood guide from the 3 Michelin-starred chef of La Bernardine, featuring gorgeous photography and step-by-step techniques, alongside 85 accessible recipes for preparing incredible fish. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. And hope I met my time frame. I know we didn't leave a lot of time.
You did. No, thank you, Liz. This is incredibly valuable input, especially in guidance, especially as we go into the Pacific Northwest dark months. So
yes,
this is certainly going to keep all of us busy, and lots of great authors with their next books. So thank you so much. I want to also kind of move along. The foundation, all of you have been supporting, many of you support the 45 programs or more that are sponsored at the library. And those include programs like homework help and author talks. We've got adult skills classes and so many more. And just to reinforce the importance of this Books Unbanded program this week, I do want to make sure that everybody is aware of what the program offers. It's free digital library cards to young people around the country. There has been an amazing response. More than 4,000 young readers have signed up. It's a growing movement. Brooklyn started it. We joined. There's now 5 libraries in total, and I think it's just sweeping the nation. So we just want to make sure that, if you're moved by this very important situation, and Liz also shared some really great content for us to also access, please consider making a gift to the foundation's Equity and Access Fund. I believe that the link was put in the chat, and support the freedom to read whatever you want, the freedom to learn for young people around the country. We really appreciate everybody's support for this. And before we leave, I also want to say that 3 of you have been selected as our lucky winners. You will receive an email from the staff, but I want to congratulate 3 people who will get a bag of books. So that's Sasha Elias, Madeline Trumbauer, and Susan McCrary. So thank you for joining us today, and congratulations to those 3 individuals. And please keep an eye on upcoming programs. Hopefully we'll get to see Liz in the spring, in the April timeframe, so we understand what's the next round. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I think we've got a couple. The Dictionary of, these are just remarks. The Dictionary of Lost Words, new book about the creators of Oxford. What about the Dictionary of Lost Words? I'm not sure what the question is, but that must be coming out. All right. We will make sure that if there are any questions, we respond to them in the chat. And with that, I'd like to, wrap up our program today. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you to
I'm just noticing a quick question in the chat about whether or not you'll be sharing the presentation. And I just want to remind everyone that it's recorded, and there will be like an email that goes out. So don't worry if you didn't write down all the titles. There was a lot of information there. So
yes, super. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Seattle Public Library Foundation staff for helping us host this today. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
thanks, everyone.